Welcome to the launch of Overexposed, and we're just going to set the scene for you with our campaign video.
I have a question. What is a segmented multi-channel donation campaign? What is a segmented multi-channel? I have a question. Why is my picture on social media profiles that aren't mine? I have another question. Why is it okay for my image to be published all over the internet when most parents will not allow it? Just one more question. Is that okay? Is that ethical? Is that fair?
So thanks for sharing that, Vishal. I hope you enjoyed that video. Vix just put shivers watching this, and I know the first time I watched it, it gave me goosebumps, really thinking about, to me, it sums up what this campaign really is all about. Big shout out to Bookie's son, Doc, who actually voiced that for us, and I think you'll all agree he did an incredible job. So before we get talking, discussing with our speakers, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what the Overexposed campaign is. So Vishal, if you could put the slides up for me, please. So what is Overexposed? Well, Overexposed is Chance for Childhood starting a conversation about the way we tell stories and use children's images. So the campaign is focused on children and young people because that is what Chance for Childhood does. And we took a step back and really thought about what were our values and were those values reflective in our storytelling and our image use? And we felt that they really weren't. And so whilst we did some internal work, what we realized is that loads of people were thinking about this, but no one was having a public conversation about it. And there's so many good resources, there's so many great organizations, and there's so many great people doing this work. And we as Chance for Childhood want to start a conversation. So today, this virtual launch is our call to arms to not just INGOs, but also to funders, to NGOs, to consultants, to researchers, to photographers, to journalists, to really think about how we tell stories. So today we want for people to start reframing their thinking on stories and images. And how are we doing that? Well, we're doing it, we're asking people to pledge to the Overexposed campaign. The Overexposed campaign has 5 arching principles. The first pledge is about prioritizing the rights and well-being of children. We're passionate about child rights at Chance for Childhood, and there's incredible work being done in the child rights sector. So for us, centering children's rights on the way we tell images and use stories was critical for us. And the next pledge is about acknowledging how complicated informed consent is. I could talk about informed consent probably for the rest of my life. It's something I'm extremely passionate about, and my poor colleagues hear me talk about it all the time. And so we really wanted informed consent and the acknowledgement that this isn't a tick box exercise to be part of this conversation. The next one is us looking about positive language, strength-based language. And really this is critical to the shift the power movement that we talk so much about in the development sector, about decolonizing the way we speak about the communities we work in. You know, if we say something enough to someone, they become it. So how do we change the narrative? We are blessed to work with the most incredible children and young people who are brave, resilient, funny, courageous, smart. Let's see their strengths, not their deficits. Let's lift them up, not push them down. Our next pledge is about acknowledging the risks. I'm head of safeguarding at Chance for Childhood. I'm sorry, I didn't actually introduce myself. My name's Vicky Ferguson. I'm head of safeguarding at Chance for Childhood. And we want to make sure that no child is put at risk by the way we share their stories and tell their stories and use their images. And really, the internet is a scary place, and it's an ever-changing place. And so really moderating and understanding the risks that we take when we use images and tell stories. And the final pledge is about power. Something really important for us in INGOs, particularly in UK and European and American offices, really acknowledging the power that we hold when we ask people to take images. Can people really say no to us? Can partners say no? Can children and young people say no? So these are the 5 pledges we're asking individuals and organizations to take. And Vishal, if you can do the next. We've already had some amazing organizations take the pledge: the Consortium for Street Children, ADD, African Promise, SIF, On Our Radar, Raising Futures of Saltways, and Empower. And what I wanted to highlight about these people that have taken the pledges is a vast range of organizations. The Consortium are a member-based organization. Empower and SIF are funders. ADD are a disability organization. Saltways is a content producer. On Our Radar, guide support in how we tell our stories. So really what we want to say is that anyone can take this pledge with us. Anyone can join us on this journey of the Overexposed campaign. Vishal, next one, please. And so how are we supporting you to take this pledge? Well, we have a number of things. We have our resource hub. Every week we'll be launching a series of resources, a video talking piece, some sessions to support you have these conversations as a team. And also, and we'll be launching one of those per week for each of the pledges. So the first one on child rights went out this week, next week informed consent, and so on and so on. And we're also going to be launching a community of practice. That's going to be a safe space for you to have conversations. We know this stuff is hard. We've been having these conversations for over 2 years at Chance for Childhood. And we're only now making a public commitment. What I also wanted to say is, as part of our public commitment to Overexposed, we are taking identifiable images of children and young people out of our stories, out of our comms. And we felt that given the complexity of the children and young people situations that we work with, that this was the right thing for us to do. But we know that that might not be the right thing for you. But this is a journey. It's about talking. It's about supporting one another to find the right solution for not only your organization, but most importantly, the children and young people that you support through your organizations. Also, we want to hear about some learning. You might have great things that we don't know about, so please reach out to us. All of the current Overexposed campaign is on our homepage, but also I'm going to ask one of my colleagues to put the Overexposed email in the chat. I forgot to put that on the slide. And please reach out to us if you want to have any further conversations, if you need any support, if you have any ideas of something we haven't shared, because we're learning too. We're not perfect. We've got loads to learn ourselves and loads to improve. This is a journey and we're taking it together. So that's a little bit about the campaign. But what I really want to do now is introduce you to our incredible speakers, because they're much more interesting than me. So Vishal, if you could get rid of the slide so we can see the speakers' faces, that would be amazing. Thank you. So I just want to introduce you to 3 incredible people who are not only my colleagues, but are my friends, who are my mentors, who I learn so much from about this and so many other things in this work. So I'm delighted to introduce you to them. First of all, we have Grace Gatera. Grace is a seasoned lived experience mental health advocate, and she lives in Kigali, Rwanda. She is a lived experience manager with the Lancet Commission for Global Mental Health and Sustainable Development, is an advisor for the Wellcome Trust Mental Health Priority Area, and as well as a commissioner on the Lancet Commission on Gender-Based Violence and the Maltreatment of Young People. She's an exceptional young woman. Buki Achola is the founder and director of Glad's House Kenya, which is an NGO supporting homeless children and young people in Mombasa. He began working with street children in 1991, and I like to remind him frequently that I was 6 when that happened. And since then, really, he's been pioneering new ways of working with children on the streets all over Kenya. And that includes the way we tell their stories. It was Bookie's pioneering vision on storytelling that challenged Chance for Childhood to think about the way we tell stories, and it's Bookie's inspiration that has led to the Overexposed campaign. And just to say, on the Overexposed Hub, you can see a blog Bookie wrote about this with us, and Grace's blog is coming soon too. And finally, Felicien is Chance for Childhood's Disability and Inclusion Lead. He has worked tireless at Chance for Childhood for the last decade, driving us forward in our commitment to ensure that children with disabilities have access to inclusive education. And that is now at the heart of Chance for Childhood's strategy. He is a passionate advocate for the rights of children with disabilities, and it has been an integral part of driving forward the Overexposed campaign. So thank you all. Enough from me. I'm going to ask you all some questions. So I'm going to start with Bookie. Bookie, can you tell us a little bit about what inspired Glad's House Kenya to remove faces from the images that you used? You there, Bookie?
Yes, I am there.
Great.
Hello, everyone. At Glad's House, we realized that priorities do change, and that inspired us to change on taking images of children. Like, I would like to tell a story of a young man who some times ago, while living on the streets of Mombasa, was beaten, mob justice, because of snatching a phone. This boy got extreme damages on his face. His fingers were chopped off, and he came to me asking for help because nobody could take him to hospital. He had been abandoned on the street. So at that time, we thought it wise that we would take photos to campaign on mob justice against children. And with his consent, we took photos of him at the state that he was. But few years later, the boy had completely recovered and had moved on in his life and was no longer living on the street. Though he was still on the street, but he was not involved in street activities like snatching and mugging. He was earning a decent life now. So someone came into my office, a street child also, and I requested him to clean clean my office for me. So he found one of these photos and went with it back to the street. And that photo ended up with that boy who had been injured at that time. It really demoralized that boy. It shocked him. It took him back to the bad experience that he had, and he was so depressed. So he came back to me and asked me why I had exposed that photos. And at that time, it dawned to me that priorities do change. And when you take photos, photos last forever. These are the experiences that the boy did not want to see, and here I reveal it back to him again. Priorities at the street do change. Glad's House is now 16 years. An example of when we started working with a boy who was 10, that boy is now 26. At 10 years, the boy was living in the street and he was sniffing glue. So when we took his photos when he was sniffing glue, at this set of time, he wouldn't wish to see those photos again, because at that time, glue was used for necessity to make him survive on the street. But now he has moved on, he has a family, and when you show these photos, when he encounters these photos, it reminds him of the past, a past experience that he wouldn't want to see again. And this drowned into us that using images of children traumatizes them at a particular stage of time. Life do change, priorities do change. And this moved us completely and said, from now we won't take photos depicting children in bad situation, because children do not want this when they grow up and see their photos exposed all over the world. Photos depicting them as as victims or delinquents or people eating from the garbage. Those are experiences that children do not want to wish to see when they grow up and become adults. For that, we thought completely we won't take photos of children. Children should be dignified. We should show them at their level of dignity and not the diminishing state that we take their photos of.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank you.
Becky. I think that's such an important point about how we often in our images and stories are talking about children and young people's absolute worst moment in their lives. And actually, as the people fighting for their rights, how can we center their positivity and their strengths and when we talk about them? So thank you for that point. Grace, I'm going to come to you now. Grace once said to me 6 of the most powerful words for the Overexposed campaign, and we were actually talking about something totally different. And Grace said to me, they take pictures of our pain, Vicky. And it has probably been my most used sentence when talking about Overexposed, because I think it captures everything that we need to say. They take pictures of our pain. So Grace, I really wanted you to expand on that point and share a little bit about your opinion and experience in having in that statement.
Yeah, thank you so much. I don't even remember that conversation because we've had a lot of conversations around this campaign, and I remember feeling very shocked that this was something that an organization was willing to back, to take on, to espouse. And it moved me very much because I'm a former refugee, and I remember from a long time ago that people have always wanted to use pictures of me and pictures of people like me, not former, even currently, refugee children running around looking dirty, maybe suffering, hungry. And I thought, I thought about it and I was like, why is this something that is being taken, right? Why are pictures being taken of me at this point? Why is it that my pain is something that needs to be captured and taken away from me and shared with the world? Why is it that the narrative is that I'm in pain all the time? Why is it that is who I am remembered as? And so I remember, even from a young age, I remember thinking that I did not want to ever appear in public online as, what they are capturing, what they are showing to the world. And it's the narrative that has always existed around African sadness and African pain and African children, right? It's always this picture of people who are needy, who are in pain, and who need support. And I think that there are ways to communicate that without what I think of as voyeuristic, as someone looking into, my life and picking all that they're picking is that I am someone to be helped, someone who is in pain, and someone whose dignity must be stripped away in order to be given the support that they need.
Yeah, thank you, Grace. That's so powerful, as always. We've actually lost Felicien. I think he's having some internet connection. So, I think that is like the perfect timing. You've just come back in the room. Felicien, you couldn't have timed that more perfectly. Congratulations, my friend. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So, Felicien, I just wanted you to talk a little bit about, as my disability and inclusion guru, why you think it's so important to use ethical images and stories of children with disabilities.
Yeah, thank you so much for the great question. To answer that question, I will try to take some paragraphs from the UNCRPD, this being the United Nations Convention for People with Disabilities, where this convention marked a paradigm shift in attitudes and approaches to persons with disabilities, including children with disabilities. And these movements represented these views from us to view people, children with disabilities, as objects of charity, medical treatment, and social protection towards viewing them as persons with disabilities who are subjects with rights, who can make decisions, and being active members of their societies or communities. And this also is underpinned to the 8 principles of this UNCRPD, especially the first principle that reads like respect for inherent dignity, individual autonomy, including the freedom to make one's own choices and independence of persons. So when you are to take an ethical picture, you are not respecting this child with disability. And the fourth principle talks about respecting for the difference and accepting persons with disabilities as part of human diversity and humanity. And there are no ways that when we try to take an ethical picture, it's as if we are against this diversity and we are not complying to this principle. And the last principle that I will talk about is number 8, that talks about respecting the evolving capacities of children with disabilities and respect for the right of children with disabilities to preserve their identities. And I liked what Book said, that when you take a picture of a child, you never know when this picture is going to be in 15 years to come. And also the other reason why we need to take ethical pictures is because we do not want to further stigmatize these children with disabilities. And we also don't want to describe or categorize them in such a way that exposes them to a negative reprisal or to a lifelong abuse. And also we want to make sure that children with disabilities, ethical images and stories provide such an accurate context for the child's story or image, because there is no way that you can take an African child, for instance, a picture of African child, and isolate that picture from African context and go paste it in European context, for instance, and say that you are still talking about this child that after you have extracted them from their own context. So when we provide ethical images or stories, we want them to still accurately provide that ethical story or image within the context where this picture or story is taken from. I understand that there are some children or programs that will still want children's identity to be kept. We do not go against that, but we will require that there should be some unique identifiers, especially when we have programs in which we are going to measure the impact this intervention has brought about. If I'm talking about, for instance, some psychosocial programs we have been running in Rwanda or in Africa, I would say that what is required of us is just making sure that we have some unique identifiers that will help us identify the child we have been working with until we are able to provide or to show the impact we have made to that very child. So briefly, that's what I would answer to your question.
Thanks, Felician. And I think what you say translates to all groups of children, whether they're with disability on the streets, refugees in prisons, whatever. We shouldn't be defining children by their situation. And often the stories we tell, that is their defining factor, not what's their favorite subject at school or who their best friend is or what their life is. That exactly. we create a caricature of a real life. And I think that's a really important reflection for all of us, no matter what context we're working in. Grace, I'm going to come back to you now. I'd really like you to sort of think with us around why it's so important for people with lived experience, for the children and young people we support, to be included in the telling of their stories.
That's a good question. I think first of all, I would push back a little on you saying included, because when you say that they should be included in their own stories, then it presents an option where they should not be included, and it's interesting because these are their stories. So first of all, it should be taken as fact that these are their stories and they're doing we are doing people a big favor, including them in our stories, right? But then it's also it's about agency and dignity, like my colleagues have spoken. It's about you know, giving people the right to speak, no longer saying giving the voice to the voiceless, because we all know that there are no voiceless. There are people who are not given the occasion. There are people who are not given the support to speak up. And so I think for me, it's about thinking about their dignity, thinking about their right to share their stories, and thinking about their right to not share their stories when they want to. And that's the thing about, and I'm pretty sure people know who work within the context of children, that children are some of the most are not given the respect and agency that they need to be able to consent or not consent to sharing their stories. And I think that it's important going forward to think about children as whole universes, as whole people who have agency, who have dignity, who have, even though they might not have the same way of articulating, because we've been here longer than them, but they know what's right for them, and they know what's good for them, and they know when to say yes and they know when to say no. So all we have to do is just respect and provide dignity, and then hope that they are willing to share with us their story, because they're incredible and we're incredible and we want to share. And I think that when children clock you as a safe person to share their story, to move forward what matters to them, then you will know. But I think that us taking away that agency from people with lived experience wherever they are is quite sad. And I think that that's something that needs to stop. And I think that that's what we are doing here. We're talking about providing the ability to say no, do not take my picture, no, do not share my story, I don't want this brought back to me 10-20 years from now, and showing me the single narrative that you have taken and put out there for the world. Sorry, I'm very passionate about this. So
Grace, you just said something that I hope everyone reflects on, and I just want to say it again. You always do this to me. You always you create these incredible sentences that was, we're doing them a favor, including them in our stories. And I think that's it, isn't it? We have to flip our mentality. Like, children and young people are doing us a favor, or not even a favor. It's a privilege for children and young people to share their stories with us. It's a gift. And we take that gift too lightly, because like you say, if you're a safe adult, it's such a privilege. And yet again, Grace, you blow my mind. Thank you. Bookie, I'm going to come back to you now. I'd really like to explore for you to share a little bit about the challenges you've had in, Bookie made this change way back in 2017. Like, this is old news for Bookie. He's like, I can't believe you're finally talking about this, Vicky. This is years old. Yeah. But can you talk to us a little bit about the challenges that you faced in the way you've changed your storytelling and image use?
Thank you very much, Vicky, for that. Challenges come in two directions. There are challenges locally and there are challenges internationally. Locally is that most organizations feel that by depicting children in situations where they are in poverty or in needy situations gives them priority to get funding. So we constantly come into conflicts with them when we try to tell them the dangers of depicting children in terrible situations. So they are used to that way, that it's the only way they can show the need of getting funding to alleviate that situation. So convincing them that it's a wrong thing to do has been a big task. Internationally is that donors want to see children in their exact situation that we are campaigning against. They want to see children living on the streets, sleeping on the streets, eating from the dustbin, having torn clothes, to justify their need of sending the funds to us. So challenges are both locally and internationally. Thank you.
And Bookie, I wonder if as well you could talk a little bit about how your relationships have changed with children, because of this change you've made?
We had to have sessions with children and tell them of, inform them of their dignity and their rights. There is a situation where we had a meeting with children, and we told them that we won't take their photos. And when we were in the middle of this session, one of us started taking photos, and one child shouted, "You promised that you'll not take our photos. Why are you now taking our photos?" So it dawned to us that we were creating impact, and children were learning of their rights of people not to take their photos. Another situation is where we were having soccer in the street with children, and an outsider just came from nowhere and started taking photos of the children. So the children themselves stood up and said, "No, you have to delete our photos. We don't know where you are taking our photos." So children have come to realize that organizations take photos to raise funds that at times never reach them. So it's their feeling that people use them to make money that do not reach them in any way. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bookie. And I think that's something we can all really think about, is how do we ensure that children and young people know their rights when it comes to having their photos taken, sharing their stories. And you know, that goes across really all the pledges: informed consent, they have the right to say no, they have the right to say no to someone that holds power over them. So I think, you know, it's a really important piece of work that Bookie and the team have done with children and young people in Kenya, and to really ensure they know what they can and can't be done using their images. Felician, I'm going to come to you now, and I would be really interested in, you know, looking at you sharing a little bit about the challenges you currently face in Rwanda about using ethical images and stories. What are the barriers? What are the challenges you face?
Yeah, thank you so much again, Vicky. Like Book said, I would also look at this in two main angles. The first one being problematic, whereby the processes of information giving, concept or assent, and the methodologies for this information collection may be insufficiently adapted to be deemed truly inclusive. And we are still having many negative assumptions that we make about the capacities of children with disabilities we work with to participate in generating data. And we also think that there are possibilities of not including them because they don't have something to offer in the process of generating this information or evidence. And with that, we tend to ignore the fact that we need to include them right from the beginning up to the end. So when I talk about the beginning, I just want to talk about involving them in the design of the project, for instance, in the design of data collection process, for instance, the way we process this, the way we share or disseminate this. And there are most cases when we do not even apply this accountability to them and invite them in the sharing events or dissemination events, and they do have no information about what we're talking about. And due to this, we tend to make sure that we are telling their stories to people who want to hear them. And we often forget that everyone has a story to tell. And we can't say that the way we tell their stories is the way they want their stories to be told. So just imagine if we want to tell our stories and you find someone telling our stories to people, we might just think that the way they are telling our stories may not be the way we exactly want our stories to be told. So the same thing is still not understood for children with disabilities. But again, there's a lot of confusion about this. When we say statements like this, there are people who think that, yes, but these children have additional needs. Therefore, they need additional safeguarding. Yes, I understand this and I agree with them, but additional safeguarding does not exactly mean additional protection or overprotection, because when we overprotect them, we are, in other words, excluding them from taking part in what they want to be done for them or with them. And by overprotecting them, we are excluding them or denying them their agency and their voices. The second angle we can look at this is just the donor requirement. Like Bob said, yes, it's true. The donors would want to see the pictures of what we are saying is unethical. So those, to me, are the many challenges I have been encountering here in Rwanda and in the region. Thank you.
Thanks, Felician. And I just on the point of donors, I've been really, really inspired. Already 2 significant donors have pledged to this campaign, to significant funders, and we're having conversations with lots of others. So I'm really hopeful about the future of how that shifts. And I think it's really important that we center our colleagues in Africa's experiences of this process and what is being asked of them. And we really need to center those voices as well as the children and young people's. Felician, I think what you said about accountability is a really important part of this campaign across all of the 5 pillars of the pledges. Are we including children in informed consent, or are we asking their parents? Are we ensuring that we show them the photos that are used of them? Are we showing them the stories and saying, are you happy with this? We have that duty, and often I think that gets forgotten, that feedback. Thank you for your time. This is what we're doing. Do we ever thank children and young people for their time and really check in with them that they're happy with what we've done with their time? So thank you for that point. I'm going to come to the last question, which is for all 3 of our speakers. And Grace, I'm going to come to you first because I know you have to leave us at 1. So thank you for your time in case you have to run off. I just wanted to hear from you what your hopes are for the Overexposed campaign. What is your call to arms to the people listening to this live and listening it back on a recording? What's your hopes? What would you like to see change?
That's a good question. I think frankly, I would like all of us to work ourselves out of a job. Not to have this campaign anymore, for it 10 years from now to be completely unthinkable. Like, why are you including the face of a child in this fundraising work? I would like more conversation around the dignity and consent issues around children, but more I would like this to be taken up not only by Chance for Childhood, but I would like ownership from the people who have pledged and who are going to pledge, so that it becomes a sort of movement in itself, so that it grows wings and it starts to be considered very seriously whenever there's a fundraising, grant writing, grant process, that people stop to think about what they're doing, about the faces of the children that they're exposing for reasons. And I think more long-term and more abstract, I would like the process of storytelling, whether it's for money or for other resources or within this nonprofit space, to stop being extractive, to start being a mutually satisfying process, where because people with lived experience, me and my background and my history, I would love to share more about it, but I would like to share it more in a space where I don't feel like something is being taken away from me, but where I feel like I am doing this for the good of the other refugees, for the good of little children who are growing up in spaces like me and who need my story to back up their experience, right? And that can only be done if people who work within these spaces stop seeing it as extractive, when they consider what they're doing, when they consider their dignity, and when they stop and think again with empathy about the work that they're doing, because it's important work and it's incredible and it should not stop, but we need to pause and think about it a little bit more.
And Grace, you make such an important point that actually is the theme of our CEO's speech at our launch last week at the House of Lords, which is we need to stop and take time and think about this. We need to get off the hamster wheel of international development. We need to and this is what the Overexposed campaign is. It's about us all creating the time collectively to think about this properly. We've been doing the same thing for such a long time. Let's stop and think. Bucky, would you like to answer the same question? What are your hopes for the Overexposed campaign?
Thank you very much. think the Overexposed campaign will bring dignity to the child, a child who has been traumatized for a long time. So this campaign will bring back joy to him. And I think it would be nice because when it comes from both angles, from the global north and global south, then it impacts in a great way on the child living in difficulties and whose tormentation should not be used to expose him and to traumatize him even more. Thank you.
Short but sweet, Becky. Thank you. And Felicia, the same question to you. What are your hopes for this campaign?
Yeah, from this Overexposed campaign, I hope that this will help people get space to think and generate more evidence about how conventional and existing ethical practices we have been using with children with disabilities in the past should be further developed to embrace inclusion in that works for our context. And the second thing is that this campaign will encourage the realization of children's right to participate and be heard, and ensure that policies and practices are informed by the perspectives and concerns of children with disabilities themselves. And more importantly, this campaign will support a wider agenda for the greater inclusion in society of children we serve. Thank you.
Thanks, Felician. So we come to the end of the questions. I just wanted to invite any of the speakers to make any final points that you feel we haven't covered in the questions before we go to questions from attendees. Grace, I know you might have to go, so a bit of any final thoughts?
No, just thanks for inviting me and for trusting me to speak about this. I'm really honored to be here.
Thank you so much, Grace. We love everything you do and stand for, so thank you. I'm very lucky to call you my friend. Thank you. Bucky and Felician, have you got any final points you want to share before we go to questions?
Yes, Vicky. Mine would just be, let's make this a culture and learn from, let's just open our minds to learning new things. And I'm sure that these children with disabilities we serve have a lot to tell. And the way we tell this is not necessarily the way they would want it to be told. So we better give them space to tell us what and how they want us to tell their stories, and make sure that we respect them and put them at the center of everything we do. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Felician. And Bucky, you had something to say?
Yes, let's just use the campaign to dignify the child living on the street and who has been in correctional institutions have faced huge traumas, and dignifying, giving him dignity would be a great thing, because it inspires hope and inspires change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bucky. And I mean, I hope, Bucky and Felician, you take some time to read the comments in the chat, because I don't think I've ever seen such a lively conversation on a webinar, and I'm really inspired to hear everyone's positivity. And there's a couple of questions that I'm going to try and find, because actually my lovely colleague Sian, thanks Sian, has been WhatsApping them to me so I don't miss them. So Jo has said she'd love to hear more about how we can help bring more funders and others to this campaign. And from my point, Jo, I think this is really about a conversation. And I think, we know we are a small organisation. We're not, I'm head of safeguarding and campaign director in my spare time. We know that we haven't got, the resource to drive it, we haven't got a campaigns team. So we really need you all to share this message. Talk to your funders about it. Send them our way. Talk to your partners about it. We have an Overexposed email, which I think has already been put in the chat. You can reach out to me directly. And I think it's really just about having conversations. Join the community of practice. I think I've made an error with the form, so apologies for that, but we'll make sure that everyone gets that sign up after this. And I think it's just about conversations. this is the only way we're going to change. And I really believe the change comes from smaller organizations and drives forward. But, you know, like I said earlier, I've been inspired to see how many funders want us to have this conversation. Angela's on the call from SIF. She's been such an advocate for this. And the Funders Safeguarding Collaborative is working with us. Funders acknowledge this change needs to happen as well. And for me, that has been, having so many conversations in the lead up to this, inspiring. But I also think it's really important to acknowledge that some of our partners working in Africa and Asia may have challenges having those conversations with funders because of power. You know, power is at the heart of all of this. And how do we support partners to have those conversations as well? So I don't have the answers, Joe. I just have more conversations to be had. Jodie has said, thanks so much for this brilliant and inspiring panel. I would agree. What an incredible 3 people to hear from on a Thursday lunchtime. Jodie would like to hear from Bucky and Felicien how you have your approach to images of children where we're telling positive stories and positive experiences, talking about positive change, and what approaches do you take to that? Bucky, I know you've talked a lot about that positive storytelling. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Positive storytelling to me is taking photos or writing articles that depict the strengths of children and not their weaknesses.
Yeah, thank you. And I think our resource pack next week, Jodie, is all about positive language, how we move our language away from quite colonial, othering, extractive language that Grace talked about. And, you know, include, not as Grace challenged me, which was such a good challenge, not just including children and young people, but make them telling us how they want their stories to be told, because it might be a positive story, but it isn't the story that children and young people want us to be telling. And I think that's the shift. Sorry, I just saw Joe's thing. Yes, Funders Safeguarding Collaborative, go check them out. Karen Walker-Simpson, absolute legend. And yeah, so really sort of thinking about, oh, we're telling positive stories, that's okay, but actually what's the next step? How do we center children and young people in, and how do we center their voices and what they want to be shared? And you know, that's hard, but I think it's really important. I have got, we've got a question here about informed consent, which is my life's passion. How to approach the tricky issue of consent? I mean, that is the biggest question, isn't it? And I think, I don't know, Bucky, Felicien, do you want to talk a little bit about informed consent, how you go about it, any proactive ways of approaching?
Yes, Vicky. First thing that I wanted to say is that it's never too late to start. Because we have all made mistakes in the past, and there are ways we have been doing things that are no longer appropriate, and we have learned from mistakes that we have committed in the past. So that's first thing that I wanted to say. The second thing is that we need to be aware of the community we serve, and we need to know the rights they were deprived in the past, and be ready to let them be aware that they still have their rights to say no and yes to what they want to be done. So if they know they have that right to say no or yes, they will tell us what they want us to say and what they don't want us to say. And the informed consent is about us getting their permission to say things they want us to say on their behalf. Therefore, we need to make sure that the community also has a lot of varieties. So the community is diverse. So like there are people who have no disabilities, there are people who have no difficulties, but there are those whose difficulties are hidden. So we need to be aware of all those and make sure that we make an informed consent. I mean, a consent that's able to kind of reach each and everyone in their respective corners. And it's only it's going to be like, how do I say this? It's going to be helpful if we make sure that we reach even those that are hard to reach. That's when our community will be like our stories, our programs, our fundraising will be like inclusive. And the third thing that I want to talk about is that now that the disability movement is evolving and is trending, we have this misunderstanding of thinking that removing the barriers will make children with disabilities included in the programs or the or whatever. No, yes, that's a starting point, but until we make them participate, that is when our stories will be inclusive. That's when our programs will be inclusive. So let's make sure that we remove all the barriers we are aware of and make them participate in the consent giving and the information giving. So that's when we'll be making sure that our consent is thorough and gathering all the information and trust we want to get from the service. I mean, the communities we serve and the children we work with.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. Bucky, did you? Yeah.
To me, with or without consent, children photos should always be taken, photos that shows the strength of the child, because as I said, priorities do change. I might get the child's consent as per that time to take a photo at a particular situation, but priorities do change. It can be right now for the child to have the photo taken, but in 2 or 3 years' time, it won't be the same situation. So with or without consent, only photos that depict the strength of the child should be taken, and not photos that shows the agony or suffering or the traumas that a child is going through. Thank you.
Thanks, Bucky. I mean, Bucky's saying with or without consent, but Glad's house consent processes are so incredibly robust. But I think you know, for me as well, it goes back to earlier points about children knowing their rights, knowing that they can say no, that I talk a lot about safe spaces and safe adults, and how it should be that sorry, I've just seen Kate going, can Bucky do another webinar on their process for consent? We will be looking at doing some webinars about each one of the pledges if there's an appetite for that. So Kate, I could happily do a 7-hour webinar on consent. So we'll diarize that. I think and we'll definitely get some other people. Again, we really want to include lots of people's voices in this and experiences so we can learn and share. The thumbs up for a 7-hour informed consent webinar is overwhelming me. I'm absolutely thrilled. I love that other people love informed consent as much as me. The question is, can informed consent really be given? Go away and reflect on that. Now, I've realized, just seen the time, so I've had such a lovely time. I've lost track of time, I'm sorry. So I think we're going to close it there. Bucky, Felicien, thank you so much for your words, your time, your expertise, your constant challenging of my values, practice. And I know now lots of other people on this call who will go away and really reflect on the words that you've said. We appreciate you so much. To all of you here, thank you so much. It is overwhelming to see the positivity for this campaign. It's been terrifying. And we're so thrilled to see the positivity. Please, please go away and pledge. chanceforchildhood.com. It's all on our homepage at the moment in the majority of this campaign. You can pledge as an individual first if you're not ready to pledge as an organisation. Please reach out to me or on overexposed@chanceforchildhood.org if you want to have a conversation. We're happy to do some internal sessions with teams. Please just reach out to me. I'm so excited that there's been so much positivity today. It means that this terrifying leap that we've taken is the right one. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful Thursday. And I look forward to speaking to a lot of you soon. Take care and thank you.